Barack Obama had a big part of 9/11.
Which part?
Not being around, always on vacation, never in the office.
Why do you think Barack Obama wasn't in the Oval Office on 9/11?
That I don't know. We'd like to get to the bottom of that.
We don't even know if he's a citizen.
Yeah, if you don't look at the birth certificate, there's almost no evidence there.
Exactly.
So there's nothing Barack Obama could do to prove that he was born here.
If there was maybe witnesses that were attendants at his birth.
Like his mother? Would you listen to his mother?
No. She has motivation to lie.
So you don't trust Donald Trump's birth certificate either?
Yeah, because he's been here forever.
Well, how do you know? But what's your proof?
Well, his parents and.
But they're biased. I'm talking about like people who could be in
Why
the room.
would they be biased?
Well, like I'm just using your logic against you.
Okay.
Like, how come you're mad at Trump but not at Obama for the deportation numbers cracks me up, because that just means that Obama's better. Obama did it better, faster, more efficient, with less American lives lost and less protests. Although there were nationwide ones, if you remember, like I do, because I was alive during then. We called him the deporter in chief. We, as in Democrats, the ACLU and the activist groups, because we didn't like the policies either. And do you know what the Republicans did? They called us morons and said that we ate our own and we didn't just get in line, and there was no united front to us Democrats. And so, haha, weren't we hilarious? We weren't to be taken seriously. Mr. Marco Rubio and Miss Lindsey Graham were up there all the time talking about executive overreach. Look at him now, shining bright as a penny on that Air Force One, with zero values and scruples left. But I digress. What you're telling me is Obama's better. What you're telling me is that none of this shit in Minneapolis is necessary, because Obama did it better, faster, stronger. Trump sucks at his job, and this is just another indication of that.
A moment of individual confusion. It is a window into the specific kind of misinformation that shaped American political life for over a decade. The birther conspiracy against Barack Obama was not a fringe belief that emerged and disappeared quickly. It was amplified at the highest levels of political media, embraced by figures who later sought and won the presidency, and directed at a sitting president who had already provided every legally required document proving his citizenship. What this conversation reveals is how completely that misinformation took hold, to the point where no evidence, not a birth certificate, not the testimony of a parent, not basic historical fact, could penetrate it. That is not skepticism. That is a belief system sealed against correction, and it set the template for how misinformation would function in American politics for years to come.
Liberals need to stop complaining about Trump's deportations. Obama deported millions of people. Where was their outrage back then?
But Obama deported way more people. They called him deporter-in-chief. Obama deported over 3.1 million people. Biden deported over 4.4 million people. Not once did either one need troops in the street in order to get that done. Both also follow the Constitution and gave them due process. They also didn't generalize all Latinos as criminals. They also didn't start going after U.S. citizens. They also didn't start selling their own merchandise or want to become the first dictator in the U.S.
Y'all want to know why they hate Obama so much? Watch this.
You have a power to stop deportation for all of them.
Actually, I don't. And that's why we're here.
I need your help.
Okay.
Stop deportation! Stop deportation!
Thank you. All right. What I'd like to do... No, don't worry about it, guys. Okay, let me finish. Let me. How about these guys don't need to go. Let me finish. I respect the passion of these young people because they feel deeply about the concerns for their families. Now, what you need to know when I'm speaking as President of the United States, and I come to this community, is that if, in fact, I could solve all these problems without passing laws in Congress, then I would do so. But we're also a nation of laws. That's part of our tradition. And so the easy way out is to try to yell and pretend like I can do something by violating our laws. And what I'm proposing is the harder path, which is to use our democratic processes to achieve the same goal that you want to achieve. But it won't be as easy as just shouting. It requires us lobbying and getting it done. So for those of you who are committed to getting this done, I am going to march with you and fight with you every step of the way to make sure that we are welcoming every striving, hard-working immigrant who sees America the same way we do. As a country where no matter who you are or what you look like or where you come from, you can make it if you try. And if you're serious about making that happen, then I'm ready to work with you. But it is going to require work. It is not simply a matter of us just saying we're going to violate the law. That's not our tradition. But the great thing about this country is we have this wonderful process of democracy, and sometimes it is messy and sometimes it is hard. But ultimately, justice and truth win out. That's always been the case in this country. That's going to continue to be the case today.
They know they could never. They know they could never. And that's why they hate him. That's why he is so far under their skin. And it's I hate to say unfortunate, but it's kind of unfortunate that he did follow the law and follow the process, because the other people hated him for doing that. If he would have broke the law and not followed the rules or whatever the case may be, this would have been a completely different conversation. But Republicans hate him because they cannot be him.
The contrast between how immigration enforcement was conducted under Obama and Biden and how it is being conducted now is not simply a matter of scale. It is a matter of method, legal framework, and the values embedded in how government power is exercised. Deporting millions of people while following due process, adhering to constitutional protections, and treating people as individuals rather than as a generalized threat is a fundamentally different act from deploying military resources, bypassing legal procedures, and using enforcement as a tool of public messaging and political theater. Obama's response to protesters demanding executive action he did not believe he had the legal authority to take is particularly instructive in this context. He did not promise what he could not deliver. He did not pretend the law did not exist. He explained the limits of executive power, committed to working within the democratic process, and absorbed the political cost of that honesty. That approach drew criticism from both sides, which is often the mark of a position grounded in principle rather than political convenience. The hatred directed at him for following the law stands in sharp contrast to the enthusiasm directed at a successor who openly defies court orders and dismisses constitutional constraints as obstacles rather than foundations.
I think I finally understand why Donald Trump hates Barack Obama and Michelle Obama so much, and it really has nothing to do with that White House Correspondents' Dinner years ago. It's that America still loves, the world still loves Barack and Michelle Obama. See, last night was an NBA All-Star game, and, well, the Obamas were there. The camera panned to them, and the crowd cheered. Everybody stood up. They got a standing ovation to the point that President Obama stood up and waved at the crowd, which led to more cheering. Meanwhile, Donnie Boy Trump shows up at sporting events and half to 3/4 of the crowd boos, to the point that the same media networks have to put clapping and cheering tracks over it to keep his supporters from attempting to boycott them. So, Donald Trump really hates the Obamas because the world still loves them, as the world has always despised him.
I made a list of things that Republicans were mad at Obama for. Do you want to hear it? Of course you do. Starting off strong, wearing a tan suit. Ordering a burger with Dijon mustard on it. Not always wearing an American flag pin. Putting his feet on the Oval Office desk. Bowing to foreign leaders. Going golfing. Going on Jimmy Kimmel. Using social media. And smoking cigarettes. Let's see if we can think of anything that MAGA's not mad at Trump about. Raping a woman, calling a reporter piggy, threatening genocide against an entire civilization, dodging the draft 6 times, saying you're gonna grab women by the pussy, violating the Constitution, I don't even know how many times, saying he wants to be a king, calling other countries shithole countries, golfing, trying to tariff innocent penguins, being racist, posting ASMR videos of people being deported, being in the Epstein files. I know I'm missing things. I mean, it's just literally anything he says or does.
The contrast documented here is not simply about hypocrisy, though hypocrisy is clearly present. It reflects something deeper about how standards of conduct are applied differently depending on who is being evaluated. When a tan suit or a condiment choice generates sustained media coverage and political outrage, and when documented legal violations, credible assault allegations, and open contempt for democratic norms generate enthusiastic defense, the inconsistency cannot be explained by political philosophy alone. It speaks to a standard that was never really about conduct at all. It was about identity, about who is allowed to hold power and who is scrutinized without mercy for the smallest deviation from an imagined norm. That double standard has real governing consequences. When the behavior of a leader is evaluated based on who that leader is rather than what that leader does, accountability becomes impossible. You cannot hold someone responsible for actions you have already decided to excuse, regardless of what those actions are. And you cannot meaningfully criticize a predecessor for choices far smaller than the ones you are currently defending. The selective application of outrage documented across this script is not a footnote to the political story being told here. It is one of its central chapters.
If you hate Trump because of his stance on illegal immigration, listen to this.
If you're a criminal, you'll be deported. If you plan to enter the U.S. illegally, your chances of getting caught and sent back just went up. The actions I'm taking are not only lawful, they're the kinds of actions taken by every single Republican president and every single Democratic president for the past half-century.
Some of y'all forgot Obama's literal nickname was Deporter-in-Chief and that he deported way more people than Trump ever did. But somehow, Trump is the racist. Got it.
The argument that enforcement numbers alone determine whether an immigration policy is problematic misses the most important distinctions between how that enforcement is carried out. Obama deported more people numerically. That is accurate and documented. But the legal framework surrounding those deportations, the due process protections extended to individuals, the targeting methodology focused on criminal records, and the absence of military deployment against civilian communities represent a fundamentally different approach to the same stated goal. When enforcement sweeps up U.S. citizens, when people with no criminal records are detained, when military assets are used in domestic law enforcement roles that raise serious constitutional questions, and when the imagery of deportation is used as political content for social media, the issue is no longer simply about how many people are removed. It is about what kind of country is being built in the process of removing them. The comparison to Obama does not exonerate the current approach. It highlights how the same policy objective can be pursued in ways that either respect constitutional boundaries or erode them. That distinction is precisely what is being debated, and comparing raw numbers without examining methods does not resolve it.
Top 3 reasons Republicans hated Barack Obama. Let's go. Number 1, he's black. Number 2, he's black. And number 3, he's black. But hold up, I have an honorable mention for you. He's black.
All right, a lot of people were in the comment section of my last video about Obama saying that was over the course of 8 years. So let's narrow down the focus. Let's look at the last 2 years of his last term, specifically at immigration enforcement outcomes. Obama had an error rate of 0.0225%. That means 54 mistakes out of 239,645 arrests. 1 mistake per 4,444 arrests. As far as deaths in ICE custody, there was 1 death per 14,314 detainees. And then there were 4 U.S. citizens that were mistakenly deported. All right, those are some pretty strong numbers. I don't know how you're going to top that.
I'm going to need someone to explain to me how Trump's deal is better than the Obama deal under the JCPOA. Because as far as I can tell, it cost us way more. People died. Children died. Billions were spent attacking another country. Billions are now given to that country. Worldwide economies were affected. We have less power, less control, and 0 guarantees, but a promise of, hey, we'll talk about doing it better later. We'll talk about uranium later. So they get the Strait of Hormuz to do with as they please. So someone please explain that to me. Explain it to me like I'm a 3rd grader. Explain it to me like I'm Eric Trump, because I don't get it. Every angle that I look at from this, it is worse than the JCPOA in every single aspect. So please explain it to me so that I can understand what all the right-wing MAGA fuckers are cheering about.
Distinct Moments is a through line connecting the politics of racial resentment, the selective application of outrage, the inconsistent standard of accountability, and the foreign policy consequences that result when those dynamics shape governing decisions. The birther conspiracy that launched with Barack Obama established a template that a black president could never fully prove his legitimacy regardless of evidence presented, and that the rules applied to him would never apply the same way to others. That template did not disappear. It evolved into the political environment that now produces the double standards documented throughout this video. The nuclear agreement comparison brings that thread to its sharpest point. The Obama administration negotiated a framework that kept Iran from developing nuclear weapons through diplomatic means, with international verification and multilateral support. That agreement was abandoned, not because it was failing, but because dismantling it became a political priority, rooted in opposition to its author rather than analysis of its outcomes. The consequences of that abandonment, conflict, economic disruption, lost diplomatic leverage, and billions spent on military engagement, are now being absorbed by ordinary Americans and by people in the affected region who had no vote in any of it. The rejection being experienced by Trump voters across their communities, documented throughout this series of scripts, is the social expression of something larger. When political decisions are made based on identity and resentment rather than evidence and accountability, the consequences do not respect party lines. They land on everyone: the fisherman, the farmer, the person without health care, the family at the gas pump, the traveler abroad, and the soldier being asked to fight a war that diplomacy might have prevented. The question worth sitting with is this: when the cost of decisions rooted in resentment rather than reason becomes impossible to ignore, what does it take to demand a different standard from the leaders we choose and from ourselves when we choose them?